the 4-day work week for me has never been a concession or a perk or a giveaway. This is a very powerful, life-changing incentive.
Welcome back to Closer Look. It's Wednesday, the 28th day of January, 2026. With Michael Friscolanti, our editor-in-chief, I'm Scott Sexsmith. Would you like to work less?
Who wouldn't?
I know, dumb question, right?
That's an obvious question. Yeah, who would?
We had Joe O'Connor on almost 2 years ago from the Work Time Reduction Center. He's pushing do more in 4. That was always his slogan. Yeah. Now he's got a new book out.
Yes.
So he's serious.
And he's been talking to some serious people, including Bill Gates, apparently.
Absolutely, yeah.
No, it is a trend. We've seen it. This 4-day work week kind of taken off, and some communities in Ontario have tried it, some companies. And the point is you don't work less and get paid less. You work 4 days,
right,
80% of the time, but still get 100% pay.
Yeah.
The idea is that you focus on being productive in those times, and then that work-life balance pays off. You work a little harder in those 4 days, get everything done. You get that 3-day weekend.
And to be clear, it doesn't mean that you're working a 10-hour day.
No.
4 days a week to hit that magic number of 40 hours.
No, you're still working those 8-hour days.
You are, because let's be honest. I mean, does anybody really, from the minute you walk in the door till the minute you walk out the door, come on.
Just me. I'm the only
Well,
one.
I mean, you and Derek.
Me and Derek. The only one, yeah. We're the only ones to do that. But it's a good question, and it has gained some. And ever since we've talked to him a couple of years ago, so much has changed.
Well, AI.
Yeah,
right?
AI is trying to change everything. I mean, there are people out there, and I don't quite grasp this, but they think that, in 20 years, there'll be no need to work at all. You can go to work if you feel like it.
Elon Musk, right?
We're all just going to be rich and filthy rich, but I don't know how that's going to work. And obviously, the other question is, this doesn't work in every industry. If you're a farmer, you're not going to be like, okay,
of course, yeah,
I'm going to take Friday, Saturday, Sunday off.
That's right.
I'll see you cows on Monday. But that's not going to work.
Milk yourselves.
That's right. That's not going to work. So there's some industries. I wonder if it's going to create work envy among the people. And then for the generation that's just starting out in college or university now, or will be soon, the question will be: is that part of your mindset? Like, are you going to try to find a career where you're going to get 3-day weekends every week?
Absolutely.
Lots of questions.
So the first question with that generation is, okay, can I work remotely? And then the second, the follow up to that is, is this a 4-day work week?
Yeah. Soon's going to be, can I work at all? Can we get fast track to that Elon Musk vision?
Well, to be clear, we want to keep working.
Anyways.
The three of us in this room, just put that out.
So Joe's coming back on today. The real question for him is he must still be working 7 days a week because he's pushing a new book. He's trying to get other
Exactly.
There's no way he's working 40 hours a week over 4 days.
We're being told to work faster than ever, and thanks to things like advancements in AI, a lot of us are actually getting more done in less time. So here's the obvious question. If productivity is up, why are we still working 5 days a week? 2 years ago, we spoke with Joe O'Connor about the 4-day work week when it was still seen as a bit of a leap. Now, with AI reshaping how work gets done, the idea suddenly feels a lot less radical. Joe is the CEO of the Work Time Reduction Center of Excellence and the co-author of a brand new book called Do More in 4, Why It's Time for a Shorter Work Week. He's back to talk about what's changed and whether technology is finally forcing a rethink of how we spend our time at work. Joe, welcome to Closer Look. It's great to have you back. Good to see you.
Pleasure to join you both again.
Joe, 2 years ago, the idea of a 4-day work week still felt experimental. What's the single biggest shift that you've seen since then?
Well, it won't surprise you to learn that it's been AI and the impact that that's having on the way that we work. And I think we're still in the early stages of that being felt. When we spoke 2 years ago, we had just come off, this was something I've been doing work on since before COVID. And it was really considered a very radical niche idea back then. We had some governments experimenting with this. We had some enterprises who had implemented it, but it was very, 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 very niche. Post-COVID, we had a couple of years where we saw exponential growth in organizations doing this, partly because of the demand from the workforce for more flexibility, more balance. This becoming something that I think, particularly for younger generations, is something that is even more important than it has been for quite some time. And also the fact that employers were dealing with a very tight talent market and were more open-minded to trying new ways of working, experimenting with new things. I would say since we spoke in the past 2 years, the pendulum has swung back a little bit in terms of we're dealing with a very fragile economy, particularly here in Canada, with what's been going on with the tariffs and the issues south of the border. As a result, employers are less likely maybe to want to take risks. And we're also seeing that for employees, the talent market is a lot more difficult now. The pendulum has swung a little bit in that respect as well. So while we are still seeing a lot more adoption of this than we were pre-COVID, I would say that the pace of growth has slowed somewhat compared to the last time that we spoke. But certainly one of the things that we talk about in my new book is talking about, in the context of AI, I believe that we're going to see that radically alter again in the coming years. And we can talk a little bit about why I think that is and why I think a shorter work week is something that really is a very necessary conversation for the types of changes that we're going to see within our economy and within our workplace in the coming years.
Well, let's jump right into that since you brought it up. It's a good point, Joe. You hear there are some people who are so extreme saying we won't have to work at all in a few years. We're just going to go to work if we feel like it, and it'll be just a euphoria. Everybody will be amazing. What's the reality? How's AI going to allow us to do this 4-day work week?
Okay, so let's talk about this at both a practical level, but also at a more philosophical policy level, because I think both are really important.
All right.
At a practical level, if you're an enterprise leader, why would you see the shorter work week as being a vehicle to effectively adopt AI? Well, there's 2 reasons. One is that we know historically one of the biggest challenges that leaders face in trying to adopt new productivity initiatives, onboard new technologies, engage in digital transformation. One of the biggest reasons why that type of activity might fail is because you lack enthusiastic buy-in and engagement from the workforce. We are singularly seeing, compared to any other technology, a greater level of fear and resistance and skepticism when it comes to AI. Actually, according to a study from Pew Global Research, Canadians are the least excited about AI of any of 25 major economies. Only 9% of Canadians are more excited than concerned. And actually, the Americans are the most concerned economy. So here in North America, we have a huge challenge and an obstacle to overcome around how do we position AI as something that isn't a threat, but is something that could be a genuine win-win for both organizations and the workforce. And so I think in that context, the shorter work week offers a very effective vehicle to say, we can share the benefits of these productivity gains with the workforce and therefore use that as a lever to get people to actually engage with how do we need to learn, how do we need to adopt this, how do we need to integrate this into our workflows. So that's the first point that
so like a carrot, Joe, you dangle it as a carrot, you say, hey, I'll give you that 4-day work week did you get on board with the AI?
Absolutely. And I mean, I think we spoke about this a little bit the last time I was on, but the 4-day work week for me has never been a concession or a perk or a giveaway. This is a very powerful, life-changing incentive. And actually, in most modern businesses, the incentive structure is completely broken. And what I mean by that is that if you're a high performer that consistently finds new and better ways to do your work, is continuously finding new efficiencies, new innovations to get things done better and quicker, what's the reward you get most of the time? More work, more tasks being loaded onto your plate. And then on the reverse scenario, if you're somebody that actually labors over your tasks and your workload, you take longer to do the same stuff, you work through your lunch breaks, you work into the evenings, you work into your weekends, often you're lauded and praised as being more promotable, more committed, more dedicated. And so we have this incentive misalignment that actually the 4-day work week can be a very effective strategic tool to get everyone pushing in the same direction, to make the pursuit of efficiency and innovation a kind of a shared mission that the workforce is completely bought into.
Fascinating. Sorry, I cut you off. You were going to make your second point before I threw the carrot question out there.
No problem. Yeah, the other point I was going to make is something that I think leaders increasingly are going to need to grapple with in the years ahead. And it's this. If you think about the impact that AI is going to have on the type of work that we do, I think about productivity as kind of a two-dimensional force. You've got efficiency, which is the speed and the volume of tasks and processes. And then on the other side, you have what we call effectiveness. And that's all about coming up with creative ideas, collaborative problem solving, making good judgments, adaptability, connection, much more the human soft skills of work. So in my view, the impact that AI is going to have on most jobs and most functions and most industries is that increasingly the efficiency parts of people's jobs are going to be outsourced to AI. We are not going to be able to compete or race against the machine when it comes to the speed and volume of tasks and processes. And so what that's going to mean is that the value creation for us in terms of the human workforce is going to shift towards those more qualitative parts of the job, those kind of effectiveness parts of the job. Those are not the types of things that you maximize with a hammer by saying we need people to work longer hours, we need to squeeze as much as possible out of people. Those are things that are cultivated by having people motivated, managing their energy, managing their focus, managing their well-being. The 4-day work week can be a really effective way to actually maximize all of those things that are going to be really critical for the future skills of the workforce.
Joe, the critics will still say that fewer hours means less output. I know you don't agree with that, but what does the data tell us?
Well, I think let's kind of parse that question in terms of fewer hours means more output. Traditionally, we've always defaulted back to this definition of productivity because it's what we've become accustomed to since the industrial era, and because it's very easy to calculate, which is you take the total numbers of hours worked and you divide it by output. And that made an awful lot of sense when most people were working on assembly lines and where the things that were most important were, reliability, consistency, punctuality, standardization. For most jobs today in our kind of knowledge-based digital economy, it's not as simple as that. Productivity is not just simply hours divided by output. If you take output for a knowledge worker, I could say I've had a week where I've produced a lot of outputs because I've attended a lot of useless meetings, produced a lot of useless reports that nobody's going to read. So the relationship between the output that we're producing and the goals that we're trying to achieve, the outcomes that we're trying to get at, is it's much less direct. And so we need a much more productivity is a lot more complicated these days than maximizing hours worked. Yes, hard work is important, but so is the quality of nutrition, sleep, exercise, time off, rest and recovery. All of these things have a role to play in terms of people's ability to both show up, perform at their best, and sustain that performance over a longer period of time.
I'm in trouble because I do none of those things. This might be our last week of the show. Joe, give us a great success story of a company that tried this out and it was just unbelievable for the employees, for the company's bottom line.
A good example, because I think it speaks to a couple of the different advantages of this for employers if it's executed in the right way, is a Toronto-based software company called Sensi Labs, which they actually spun out of Click Health. And so they are a relatively small to medium-sized technology company. And so this solved two problems for them. The first problem it solved was that they were competing with the likes of Amazon, Google, and Meta for product developers and engineers. And they could not compete on brand name, and they could not compete in terms of being able to offer the kinds of top dollar salaries that those global behemoths can offer. So they needed to change the rules of the game. And they did so by offering this creative alternative benefit that they knew those bigger competitors most likely would not be offering. So it allowed them to attract and retain top talent that they otherwise simply would not be able to have. The second thing it did was that they basically asked everybody to think about how their own day-to-day work connects with the revenue, the bottom line, and the productivity of the overall organization. And through that process of discovery, they realized that most of their people did not have a clear understanding of the relationship between the work that they did and the overall objectives and the value the business was trying to create. So what this did was it created this relentless, sharp focus on what are the things that we're doing that drive the most impact versus what are the things that we're doing that maybe we can reduce or remove or look to do less of. So that's one example of how, to me, the 4-day work week, as I said earlier, isn't just a kind of a well-being initiative. This is something that actually, if it's designed and executed in the right way, can have a lot of benefits when it comes to embracing new technologies, creating incentives for productivity, and also recruiting and retaining the best talent.
Joe, there's going to be sectors where obviously the 4-day work week just clearly won't work. Will that set up, a bit of jealousy and almost a two-tiered work environment?
I think when we say that the 4-day work week won't work, we need to. So I agree that there's lots of industries, for example, where a 4-day work week where everyone has a universal day off won't work because you need to maintain customer service across 5 days. And in many cases, for some of the companies I've worked with to implement 4-day work weeks, the employees are working 4 days, but maybe the business could be operational for 6 or for 7. So those two things aren't necessarily the same. And I would say, if you take manufacturing is an area that a lot of people would say, I don't see how that could work. I kind of see it for desk work. Manufacturing, it's a lot more difficult to see. But I've worked with a couple of big manufacturers in the last few years, and just a few observations. First, even on the factory floor, the relationship between a unit hour of labor and productive output, because of technology, isn't quite as clear as it used to be 100 years ago. Secondly, if we think about this conversation around incentives, I've worked with organizations where machine operators, if they have the machine running during an hour, they are classified as being 100% productive for that hour. Now, they could be running 2 machines, maybe even 3 machines. They could be using the time while the machine is running to retool or to collaboratively problem solve with their colleagues or to engage in quality control activities. But whether they do or they don't has no relationship as to what if the machine is running, they're 100% productive. So this problem in measurement and incentivization exists even in those environments. And to give you one more example, I've seen in those organizations where teams that rely on overtime as part of their core salary package. So, if you have a custom practice where typically speaking, you get 15-20% of overtime, then what does that create? It creates a perverse incentive for people to actually say, I'm going to leave certain jobs on the board. I'm not going to start certain things at 3 or 4 o'clock in the day because I'm going to need to do that job as part of the overtime that I expect to work at the weekend. So this is just to give you an example of how even in those types of settings, if you are creative and intentional about how you design it, you can absolutely use time as a way to drive efficiency. It may not look like the same as a 4-day work week in an advertising agency, but the same principle absolutely still applies.
It's fascinating. Here's the $1 million question, Joe. Did you only work 4 days a week on the book?
I don't think I even worked 4 days a week on the book. I was fortunate. I was collaborating with a wonderful journalist called Jared Linson, who writes for Fast Company, Globe and Mail, Toronto Star, and we had a good system going where I would throw ideas and research and thoughts on a page, and he would make it sound really good. So
that's great.
I feel I kind of had a bit of a cheat shortcut to becoming a published author by virtue of working with John.
That's great.
All right, Joe, if you had 60 seconds to convince a CEO that this is the way to go, what's your elevator pitch?
Can I use the time differently? Sure. I'm gonna use the time to convince Canadian policymakers why they need to be thinking about this issue. We have seen in the US, but all over the Western world, how we've seen once trusted institutions being turned away from, and how populist far-right movements are gaining traction. And if you kind of look at the analysis of why that's happened, most, political economists would say it's because of people feeling left behind by the last great advances in globalization and digitalization. It's because people felt that, they didn't share in the gains as those kind of, as our economy was reshaped, these people didn't share in the spoils. We have an even more transformative force coming at us like a steam train in the form of AI. And if we don't think about how do we not make the same mistake again? How do we make sure that the workforce as a whole shares in the benefit of this technological advancement and these productivity gains? I think that there are serious long-run consequences for employment, for our tax base, for social cohesion. And so for me, a 4-day work week is a very tangible, very universally valuable, very meaningful thing that should be the starting point for how do we make sure that everyone benefits from the AI revolution.
It's fascinating.
Joe, you guys sat down with Bill Gates, I understand, as part of the research for the book. What was that like?
It was a lot of fun. Again, we were fortunate. Jared was actually speaking to him in the context of Bill's book, and Bill was very gracious in agreeing to talk to us a little bit because he had predicted. Bill actually makes me seem like a bit of a conservative because Bill predicted we might be only working 2 or 3 days a week as a result of AI. But my challenge to the point that I just made is his version of a shorter work week the same as the one I'm talking about, which is about preserving income and employment while people work less? Or does it mean that maybe lower skilled workers might need to work multiple jobs in order to, have the same level of income? Does it mean that the state might need to step in and subsidize people's income through the form of something like a universal basic income? Again, we talked a little bit about the situation in the United States. I'm not sure how much the current Republican administration would love the idea of private companies like Microsoft and others who are benefiting hugely from AI, effectively passing over the bill to the public sector and to the state in the form of a UBI. So to me, if those are the types of alternatives we're dealing with, a shorter work week feels like a much more fair and equitable way to move forward.
Real quickly, Joe, I know you have to go, but just to build on that, how do we make sure that there's a large segment of the population that isn't left behind by all these huge changes? It's for me, I'm in the workforce in the middle of my career, but it's overwhelming just hearing about these changes coming at us so fast. How do we ensure that so many people aren't left behind?
Yeah, I mean, I've followed the elections in Canada, the US, the UK, and my home country of Ireland in the last couple of years. And I have despaired at the fact that I don't know if AI was even a top 10 issue for debate when there is nothing else that is going to transform our societies and economies in the way that this will. I mean, it's a big question. Where I would start is the reality that most CEOs are facing in enterprises right now is they have 2 choices. We can either use the time savings and the efficiencies from AI to create cost savings in the form of reduced headcount, where we do the same with less resource, or we can choose a different path where we seek to create more value with the same resource by investing AI in the workforce. Obviously, this path is much more beneficial for the sustainability of our society and our economy. However, the incentives in organizations at a shareholder level often default to the short-term cost saving. And so I think there is a role for policymakers to incentivize enterprises to choose to invest these gains in the workforce, because that's obviously a much more desirable path, I think we'll all agree, for the future.
All right, good stuff. The new book is called Do More in 4, Why It's Time for a Shorter Work Week, authored by the one and only Joe O'Connor. Joe, always good to see you. Thanks for your time.
Great to see you both. Take care, folks.
Always good to have a conversation about doing more in 4 with Joe. I'd be happy if in the summer it was a 4-day work week.
Yeah. In the winter, a 6-day work week.
Winters, man. I don't get me going. I'm just so done with it.
It's pretty depressing out there.
This is the best room to be in because you can't see the crap that's going on outside.
That's right.
Right?
That's
you
right.
don't know how cold it is. You don't know how much snow is falling. So this is ideal.
It's true. I really enjoy talking to Joe, too. That's the second time we've had him on. And so much has changed even since the time we had him on a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't know how all these chips are going to fall in the end in terms of, AI is going to have a massive impact on how we live our lives. A decade from now, it's going to be totally different. And it's going to impact the workplace in ways we can't even imagine, to be honest. And these people like Joe and others who think deeply about this won't even know for sure how it's all going to pan out. But the one thing's for certain, things are changing. I mean, that just we're a bit older, but if you're a young person in college or university right now,
wouldn't want to
workplace is going to be different, but maybe it'll be amazing. Maybe
it could be.
Who knows?
Well, and you brought it up off the top, the concept of 10 years from now not even having to work. And it was actually Elon Musk that said that. He predicted that within 10 to 20 years, advancements in AI and robotics will make traditional employment optional.
Optional, yeah.
I don't know how we pay for anything.
That's what I'm wondering.
But
it'd be a communist state. But also him mentioning Bill Gates reminded me, Bill Gates has said that as well. 2 to 3 day work week will be the norm. I don't know how that's going to pan out, but it is interesting to talk about. Maybe at least give you something to shoot for.
Yeah.
I do think, like I said, I don't know if we said this before we jumped on the air, but if you're a young person coming up through the workforce, these are going to be things you're going to think about. We've talked to experts about how remote work is now the big question. Do you want to be able to live wherever you want and work remotely?
Yes. Yeah.
The 4-day work week will be part of it too, because you'll have that different offer. Well, I can get a little more money here, but I can work 4 days a week here. That's a whole different animal. So it'll be interesting.
And we're stuck in here, right?
Here.
It's not like we can do the remote work.
7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Until we launch Jamaica today.
That's right. That's right. We don't even know what – it's all out like solitary confinement. We don't even know what day it is out there.
We really don't.
You said it off the top, but I don't know if it's accurate.
Yeah, it's not. It's like a dart, right? Just throw it and see where it lands. Okay, closer look at villagemedia.ca. What do you think? 4-day work week? Could we do it? Let us know. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And, of course, sign up to receive our show sent right to your inbox through closerlookpodcast.ca. This evening's program is always produced by Derek Turner for Michael Friscolanti, our editor-in-chief here at Village Media. I'm Scott Sexsmith. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow night at 7 right here on Closer Look.
Frisco and Scott's Wardrobe provided in part by Moores, Sault Ste. Marie.